You start by knowing yourself. Right now, introspection and self-awareness are some of the really key things that leaders need if they want to improve. So, great to have you back front of mic.
Yes, I am so excited. And we're actually doing this in the Acast studio. So this is probably the first episode that we've ever done a Q&A in person.
We've rarely been in the same city together at the same time. So, yeah, it's fantastic. And thank you to Acast. They're our podcast host. Great company and really good studio here. We love it.
Yeah, we're going to be coming back here a lot, I think. Now, this episode, Marty, this is one that we've had for a little while on the chalkboard, all about crafting your leadership identity.
Absolutely.
We get a lot of questions about it. We've done a bunch of different episodes that touch on bits and pieces, but we're going to dig a little bit deeper today.
Absolutely. And there's a few things that are going to contribute to this. So there's the underlying framework that every leader needs to have in their kit bag, but there's individuality. And we talk about your leadership fingerprint, that uniqueness that you bring to the role, and also about your personal leadership statement, your user manual, which is an awesome way to let your people know what to expect from you. So we're going to cover all of that in only 20 minutes.
Let's see how we go.
Okay.
Let's start with why it's so important to have your own leadership identity. Why do we want that as leaders?
I think probably the most important thing is that it's hard to do it any other way. Every individual is different. Everyone has different experiences and upbringings and preferences and personalities, and all of this feeds into who you are. And so whereas you're going to need some really strong fundamentals for how to lead people, by the same token, you've still got to be you. And people talk a lot about authenticity. We'll go into that a little bit later. But it's really about being who you are and still being able to be a strong leader within that. If you're not, people are going to pick it.
And is this something that you naturally have? Like, is this natural talent that gives you this leadership identity? Or is it something that people typically learn?
I think it can only be learned, to tell you the truth. Now, there are people who are more predisposed to leadership than others, and we know that. The difficulty is that if you just go by your natural instincts and you don't have the framework for strong leadership, a lot of the stuff is actually counterintuitive. Now, let me give you a little example, right? I played a lot of team sports when I was growing up, and in team sports, leading from the front means a completely different thing than it does in business. And so you've got to be aware of the fact that the context of business is slightly different when you're leading people. On a football field, for example, leading from the front means you're putting in the most effort, you're doing the most work, you're showing people how to rise up in times when you're going through adversity, and everyone follows you because you're setting the example for them in what they need to do.
Yeah.
In business, the concept is, okay, you still need to lead from the front, but you do it a completely different way. You don't do your people's work for them. You're not the captain of the team with the same job as the other players. You're the coach on the sideline. You're helping people to lift to be their best. And the only way you can do that is by stretching them and letting them do their jobs. So in that context, leading from the front means something totally different. It means you're demonstrating the right attributes, the right characteristics, the right values. You're showing them commitment to the job. You're showing them a standard of excellence. You're showing them that you're accountable for what goes on, but still in the context of your own role. And that's just one of the subtleties that doesn't translate well between the natural leadership of someone who's come through, as a captain of a sporting team and someone who's got to lead in a corporate environment with many layers of resources below.
And so I imagine if you've got natural talent and a framework, that's dynamite, right?
Yes, but they don't just automatically integrate themselves. There's got to be a lot of work done to actually practice the skill of leadership. It takes repetition, like anything does. You've got to do your 10,000 hours of work if you want to be expert at anything. And the repetition is what helps you to consolidate the principles that you need, the foundations of leadership, and then to build that into your own personal individual uniqueness. And that's not easy to do. It takes a lot of thought. It takes a lot of deliberate, methodical planning about how you want to incorporate things and whether they're consistent with who you are. Because, if you don't have that level of congruence between who you are and the way you're acting, people will see that, and it results in lack of trust.
So, how do you pick the right framework? How do you pick the framework that is going to, feed into those natural tendencies?
Well, the difficulty, Em, is that a lot of the frameworks out there aren't actually implementable, if that makes sense.
Mm.
There's a lot of stuff that is aspirational and motivational and can be useful, but not practical enough to really do something with it. So when we talk about practical leadership tools, what we're talking about is the things that you can take and use every single day to get better at a particular element of leadership, whether it's working at the right level, whether it's becoming more resilient, whether it's handling ambiguity better, whether it's making your decisions in a more rapid but methodical way. So there's a lot of things that you can work on depending on what you need to incorporate at any given point.
So, I guess it's a really natural way for me to, bring in leadership beyond the theory, which is our framework. How do you think that LBT supports people in creating their own leadership identity?
Well, I think regardless of where you are in your leadership career, leadership beyond the theory is going to give you that bedrock, the
Mm.
foundational stuff of if you do these things using these tools, you will be better at leading in this way. But everyone's going to apply them completely differently depending on their unique personality and experiences, as I said before. So, for example, working at the right level, some people are going to be more nurturing, naturally more nurturing. Some people are going to be more challenging to their people and expect them to step up and fill that vacuum that they leave and be more challenging in terms of what they expect from their people. And so working at the right level will look different based on how much support and nurturing that leader is prepared to give and wants to give to the people who they're trying to coach and mentor through the process. And so, as an individual, when you try and work out how you're going to incorporate that, it's all about how do I do this in a way that's natural for me, that's consistent with who I want to be as a leader, that supports my value set. But the principle of working at the right level is identical, no matter who
Mm.
you are, no matter what level you're operating at, no matter what industry you're in or where you live. The principles are the same. So understanding the principles enables you to then incorporate them into your own style.
Yeah, I love that. I want to switch gears a little bit. So, talk to me about how the leadership identity can impact your team and the dynamics of your team and your people. How does that all fit together?
Yeah, well, the leadership identity really is about being able to drive your team to get the right results. Remember, leadership's all about getting results. So you've got to deliver value no matter what you do. And different leaders with different identities will do it a slightly different way. But more than anything else, you need to establish trust. As I said before, you can't establish trust unless you have a level of congruence. But you also need a level of competence and skill. And you also need to apply some of the principles that are absolutely necessary to get outstanding results, like driving accountability through your team and having that single point accountability, not having an autonomous collective that basically makes all their decisions by consensus. So having those fundamentals and then working out how you leverage that is really important. The object of the exercise is to build trust. You can't do the hard work of leadership without building trust. And to do that, you need to have some empathy for your people. And I'm not saying you need to be sympathetic and get down in the hole with them and complain about what's going on in the world.
Mm.
What I'm saying is you need to be able to see the world through your people's eyes. You need to be able to show them that you understand them and you can talk to them on their level and you can relate to them. And once you start relating to people, they'll start to trust you. Now, of course, they won't fully trust you until you show them how you respond when things go badly, because every leader can sail in a calm sea, right? It's when things go badly that people look at you and say, well, what happens now? Am I going to get hung out to dry or am I going to be supported? And those critical moments either really consolidate trust, they're the icing on top of the cake, or they destroy everything you've built prior to that.
Yeah, there's so many situations where a leader will say something and then in the heat of battle, they do something completely different.
Absolutely.
That dissonance is so unnerving. It just makes you think, I don't know what to expect from this person, and it's tricky.
Yeah, it's also incredibly common though, Em, because leaders revert to type when the pressure is on. We all do.
Mm.
Our natural tendency is to go back to what we know best. And so even though we might be very controlled and methodical about how we present ourselves to the world and our teams when we're at work, Everyone has their game face. They put their game face on. And what is it that makes that game face crack? What is it that makes it impossible for the leader to continue in a calm and rational way, but instead to give into and cave with the fear that comes from when things go wrong? And so people are always going to want to know that you're good under pressure. This is why we talk a lot about in Leadership Beyond the Theory, the concept of grace under pressure. Complete congruence between what you're showing on the outside, that calm, rational, logical, supportive type of attitude and approach to problems, and what's going on in the inside. You actually feel that. You don't feel stressed or pressured or anxious. You feel as though you're in control.
Okay, so I'm a leader. I've been leading for a little while. I want to create my own
You've
leadership.
been leading for quite a while. And you're pretty good at it, actually, if I don't say so myself.
Thanks. I want to create my own leadership identity. Where do I start?
You start by knowing yourself. Right? Now, introspection and self-awareness are some of the really key things that leaders need if they want to improve. You can't work out how to get better if you don't know where you're weak and you don't know where you're strong. So it's really important to know your strengths and weaknesses, not just, what are you good at, but also, what is it that really lights you up? What do you enjoy doing? So that strengths being the combination of what am I good at, what do I like doing, and then your weaknesses being the areas where you should be able to perform, but you actually can't for one reason or another. And I think there are, varying degrees of weaknesses. Some leaders I've seen have weaknesses that are what I would call showstoppers. So until you resolve that weakness, I can't promote you to the next level because the next level requires X, Y, or Z. And if you don't have that, that's not going to work. And I've had many of those conversations. But, by and large, that self-awareness lets you think about, okay, if I were to improve, what area would give me the most bang for buck? Where would I start if I wanted to get better? What's the thing that prevents me from being my best when I'm leading? What's the thing that scares me or that I can see clearly isn't getting results and serving my team the way it should? Start there, start simple, start small, and get your confidence.
And then as I get more experience, how do I make sure that my leadership identity is going in the direction I want it to, not just what feels natural? Like if you've been leading for 10, 15 years, is there a way you can kind of check in and go, what is my leadership identity morphed into? Is it what I want it to be?
Yeah, look, there's many ways to check in. One is to just look at the scoreboard. Am I getting results? The acid test for any leader, you've got to get results. Are my results the way I want them to be? If they're not, think about what you're doing. Like think about the inputs, think about the front end of what you're doing. And are you doing the things that should make you successful, logically? That's a good place to start. The other thing is that if you're doing something that isn't consistent with your value set or your approach or the way you want to be as a leader, it will feel that something's off. It'll feel like, well, this isn't quite right. Now, this happens all the time in business. A leader is asked to do something by their boss. They don't feel like it's the right thing, or they don't feel good about it, or they feel as though there's a better way. And those critical points where you either say, look, I'm not up for this. I don't think this is the right way to treat people, or I don't think this is the best thing for the business. And you have that out with your boss. Many leaders who are a little bit conflict averse can't do that. And so the boss says, I need you to go away and do this for me. The dutiful leader says, sure, boss, I'll do it, and then finds himself in a conundrum. I know I've agreed to do this. I know that the boss wants me to do this, but I don't feel as though it's something that I should do. And this is the gradual deterioration of a leader's confidence and self-respect, is through doing too many of the things they know aren't right or don't feel as though it's consistent with who they are. And this happens, to all of us to some extent. Like you can't walk out of a job the first time your boss says, I want you to do something. You say, I don't agree. You know what you can do with your job, boss. Right? That's not the way that it normally rolls out. That's not the way to do it. But there is a real strength and a real power in being able to have the conversation with your boss where you say, look, I just don't agree with this for these reasons. And to being able to stand on that line and have the discussion. And if you push too far away from where your value set is, then you only have one option, which is to vote with your feet.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, we've covered quite a bit here. We've got a few resources from past podcast episodes that I think would be really useful in helping people to work out their leadership identity and just get the cogs turning a little bit.
Mhm.
We've got the personal leadership audit, which is a great one to work out where your blind spots are. So that one, talks to that self-awareness that you were speaking about. And then in episode 257, we had a really good downloadable there as well, your leadership user manual. So your CEOmentor.com/episode 257 is where people can go to get that. And we'll leave the links in the show notes. But Marty, can you just do a quick wrap on that, everything we've just gone through?
Sure, absolutely. And so, talking about leadership identity, you will have somewhat a level of uniqueness to how you behave and perform as a leader. But despite that, you still have to have the foundational elements of what good leadership is. So, if you want to be a strong leader and get results, there are certain things that are predictably useful and have huge benefit in bringing to your team. They're good for the team, they're good for you as a leader, and they're good for the organisation you're leading in. So that's a really important factor. Having that self-awareness to know who you are, to know what's important to you, to know your strengths and weaknesses is really important. And I didn't mention before, but when you mentioned the personal leadership audit, I think that the value of a trusted advisor also can't be overlooked. So if you've got someone around you, particularly a direct report, who you can trust to tell you what they're observing in your behaviour, because they get to see you every day in the field of battle, that's a really important way to get the feedback that you need. Not the feedback you want, the feedback you need. We covered a lot of stuff, the nuances and differences between the natural leadership style that you might have learned as a child and what's required in a multi-layer organisation where you have to lead other people. So there was a lot of conversation around that. And then, of course, trust, empathy, and congruence. How do your people see you as a congruent leader who sticks by your values and principles when times get tough and when the pressure's on? So I think that covered most of it. Is there anything I missed, Em?
No, that was
That's pretty good.
Yeah, that was pretty good. All right, that's it. That's it for us today.
Thanks, Em.